I remember so well that the one and only hotel at Rottingdean, they had a waiter or somebody who was a German. And when the news came through by telephone to say that war had been declared against Germany, I can see him now rushing out into the road there, wringing his hands and in his guttural English saying, "It is madness." He was really shocked.
We were delighted. We had been preparing for the previous fortnight for the annual cavalry manoeuvres, which would take us down into the South Salisbury Plain, and it wasn't so very popular. And when we heard that war was declared, everybody was delighted, and we thought it far more amusing to go and see some part of the continent than to go on manoeuvres. And literally cheers went up from each side of the barrack square from the men when somebody gave out war was declared.
We didn't know until the last moment whether or not England would come in, but we were not surprised when we heard this news. And we took it up very, very cheerfully, because after all, if you are a commissioned officer in the forces, you don't want to drill all the time and learn, but you want to show what you've learned. On the other hand, we fully realized that the size of the German fleet was practically nothing in comparison with the almighty British fleet.
At the particular day when war was declared, I was on holiday, and lots of people were on holiday, and it came suddenly. I was away staying with some friends, and it was on the newspaper placards when Dad came home at night, and it said, "War's been declared on Germany." People who followed politics, of course, suspected it, but I don't think I bothered much about it. You don't when you're young and having a good time.
War had been declared, and the following Sunday I went with a friend of mine into Shepherd's Bush Empire to see the picture show there, and at the end of the show they showed the fleet sailing the high seas and played Britain's Never Shall Be Slaves and Hearts of Oak. And you know, one feels that little shiver run up their back and you know you've got to do something. I was just turned 17 at the time, and on the Monday I went up to Whitehall, Old Scotland Yard, and enlisted in the 16th Lancers.
Well, I joined up on the 8th of August 1914 after a night out with the boys, and we all decided to enlist the next day. Kitchener's Appeal was on the 7th. In the morning they retracted, but I went on and I came up to London and enlisted in Scotland Yard on the 8th of August. Got there about 10. There was a queue right up to Whitehall one side and Northumberland Avenue the other. I queued up, not feeling too good. I think I fell out and had a scotch during the day. I got in front of the doctors about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and about 4 or 5 of us were sworn in together.
So I went right up to the front and into the gates, where I was met by a sergeant major at a desk, and my friend, he introduced me to the sergeant, and the sergeant said, "Are you willing to join?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 18 and 1 month. He said, "Do you mean 19 and 1 month?" So I thought a moment. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Right, I will sign here, please." By about 6 o'clock in the morning, we were ready to depart, and we did depart by train from somewhere. I forget where we marched to. Without any buy or leave, without any leave or without anything saying goodbye to one's family or anything. I remember that I wrote a postcard when I was in the train and chucked it out of the window at a station, hoping that it would be delivered to my people at home. That was all. And we arrived that evening at Southampton. That was on the 18th of September 1914, and we embarked that evening. And, well, that was the start of things.
I was all right. Some of the chaps were sick, but I think we went from Folkestone to Le Havre. Yes, because we landed there, and it was right on the top of the hill, this camp, this place was which we were landed. When we got near the French, we say, "Oh look, there are two men over there. Let's hear some French." And one chap called it, "What's the matter, you buggers?" or something like that. And they were Englishmen. I always remember that.
We get off the boat eventually, everything full pack and all the rest of it, and we march off. Oh, it must have been about 4 or 5 miles uphill. It was murder. And then when we got there, it was under canvas, the tents they were, and I'm sure they were that deep inside the tents in mud. Woodbines were 6pence a packet. To what soldiers? Of course we were there for a few days, but we were all playing out to get on a draft. It was that horrible there. The food was awful, the bloody place was awful, you know. We're all clamouring to go on a draft up to front. We're clamouring, we're asking and begging to go on a draft up to front. We moved to the right, I remember, got through a churchyard, a cemetery, and then dropped down into a trench. And I couldn't believe it. I was knee-deep in mud for a start. I'd never been told about the Somme and the mud on the Somme. It was all new to me. Well, we slashed down this communication trench. We passed a support line, and then we went further up and got to what was the front line. And then that was the first we knew about trench warfare. We were told we hadn't to show our heads above the parapet because there were snipers and they would get us if we did, you see, so we had to be careful. It was a bit of a shock because I could hear shells exploding and rifles and machine guns going in the air. And I thought, well, I shan't be here above 5 minutes. It depressed you a bit. Just, I'd not been warned about it, you see. I had no idea what it was like.
Taking the French trenches first, we found when we took over the French trenches in the Kemmel area, they were very much deeper than ours, but not kept in the cleanliness and order and one would expect to find from taken over from a similar, which we say infantryman to another infantryman. They weren't in a similar condition to ours. They were dirty and the trees at the back weren't in a similar condition to ours as regards keeping clean. The German difference was that they would be reinforced with a kind of wattle fencing, wattle construction. That the breastworks would be reinforced with others, but you didn't find it with the British trench. They'd simply be sandbagged.
Well, the average day in the only bit of the trenches was just basically doing nothing, except perhaps filling a few sandbags to strengthen a bit of the parapet of the trench. But of course there had to be always somebody on sentry go all the time on each section of the trench. Apart from that, trench life was extremely dull. You simply slept and wrote letters, except when you're on that sort of duty.
We took part in the assault on the Saar trench, and in the morning before it got light, I went up to have a look around this new ground we'd taken. And I went round with the company commander and was very pleased with what he'd done. And just as it was getting light, started off back to my battalion headquarters, and I hadn't gone more than a few yards before I was shot in the thigh, and I fell into a shell hole full of water. It was freezing hard, full of water and ice. And every time I raised my head to try and put a bandage on my leg, the sniper had another go at me. So I had to lie in the water and just wait for help, which did come in the form of Canadian stretcher bearers. But my unfortunate orderly, whom I thought I was doing the best I could for him, I told him to go on when I was hit. That's to say, to go back. Was hit on the way back and died. But I came through because I was lifted out by Canadian stretcher bearers later in the morning.
Well, the blast
blew me out of that trench. I was just getting to my feet, as you go down, it blew me out of that trench. I bruised my hip on the edge of the trench as I fell out, I think. And I landed about, 2 or 3 bays away. Well, they both dropped at these 2 officers in front. I started to say, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yes." And so I started to walk on after them. No bones broken. And so I walked on a bit, and I felt this hand was wet. So I wiped it on my breeches. And I wiped it a second time on my breeches. Not that, God, it's blazing, so everything's dry as a bone. There was blood running off my hands. Oh, hell. So I just shouted up. I said, "Half a more, a helmet after all." So we sat down in a hall. I'd got a field dressing. You must have a field dressing in the corner of your tunic, you see. I didn't know then. I'd got one in here through my jaw, and one in the throat here, just missed the jugular word, and another one in the back. I'd stuck 4 pieces out, and I never felt him. You feel it afterwards, but just at the moment, you didn't feel anything at all.
The authorities knew there would be a sort of difficulty in organising demobilisation in an orderly fashion, instead of it being a free-for-all, which would have been terrible. I mean, absolute chaos. Everybody going home at once, and there was rationing, and it was very, very difficult. So there was a system of grading devised in the form of groups. And they were run groups from 1 to about 40 odd. Group 1 were miners and agricultural workers. Those men who were essential for the satisfactory conduct of the economy, if you can use those words. I was group 40-something, auctioneer and valuer, right at the end of the queue, right at the end, no, not a chance.
The band of the Grenadier Guards was playing "See the Conquering Heroes Come" and on Dover landing place. And then we got into a Red Cross train with nurses, and they gave us a postcard which was printed in red, and said, "You had to put your parents' address on where you want to send it to. Say, I'm arrived in England, I'm going to Canterbury for about 10 days, and I should be home." So they took us up. We went to Canterbury then for 10 days. At the camp there, was lovely, and spring beds, ordinary spring beds and sheets, didn't know ourselves. And issued new army clothes we had, and clean and bath. They treated us well there.
I would like to add, it's a quotation from Kipling, which he wrote on the occasion of the return of the men from the Boer War. But I feel that it applies also to those men who returned after the First World War, very much so. And this is it. "Me that have seen what I've seen, how can I ever take on with that awful old England again, and the parson and gentry between, and touching my hat when we meet? Me that have been what I've been."
They were summoned from the hillside, they were called in from the glen, and the country found them ready at the sterling call for men. Let no tears add to their hardship as the soldiers pass along, and although your heart is breaking, make it sing this cheery song. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though the lads are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark clouds shining. Turn the dark cloud inside out till the boy